Today we're going to show you how to migrate from WooCommerce to Shopify using Altera. This not only will include migrating our product data, but also categories, orders, customers, as well as redirects for SEO and product reviews. Let's get started. So here we have our WooCommerce site. We can see we have some different products here, and one of the products specifically has an image embedded within the description of the product. If we go over to the WooCommerce admin, we also see that we have some orders here, test data in our case. Now to export this data, we need to configure up a WooCommerce API integration. To do that, first we need to go to Settings, Permalinks, and we'll make sure that our permalink structure is set to something besides plain. So any of these other options will work. We have day and name, which is the default, but you can use another one, and this is just required for the API to work on the WooCommerce side. Once we've confirmed that the permalinks are correct, we'll go over to WooCommerce and the settings section. From here we'll click on Advanced and then REST API keys. And now here we need to create new API keys to be able to download the data from WooCommerce into Shopify. So for description, we can write Altera, link it with our user or any user that has permissions to see the WooCommerce orders and products. And then we just need to select read permission because the API keys should not have write access to the WooCommerce data. Then we click on Generate API Key, and we receive a API key back with a consumer secret and consumer key. These are the values that we'll copy into Altera to make the connection. Now that we have our API keys from WooCommerce, we can connect them to Shopify with Altera. To do that, we'll go over to Shopify and open up the Altera app. On the left-hand side, we'll choose Migrations, and we'll have the WooCommerce tab selected and paste in our information here. The site URL is usually just your domain, so we can copy that over. And then we need to copy in the consumer key and the consumer secret. If, for example, you put in an invalid consumer secret and try to connect, the app will give you helpful information with a link to the documentation to help and debug the API connection issues. But we'll go ahead and paste in the complete key and then click connect. At this point, the app will connect to the WooCommerce API and see how many products and how many orders you have. Now what we can do is generate an Excel file that contains all the Shopify data that we'll need to import the data into Shopify. We have the different data types here, and by default they're all selected. And then we have one option for the reviews, which format we want. There's a raw format which just contains all the possible data, but then you can also import it directly in the Judge Me format. We'll import it in the Judge Me format. Lastly, I want to point out the filters here. You can do different things like only import products of certain statuses. At this point, we'll import everything, but in the future, if you need to bring back just a subset of data, you can do that there as well. Once everything looks good, we'll click on Run Migration. And now at this point, Altera will go through, download the data from the WooCommerce API, and create a spreadsheet for us of all the different data types. For a smaller store like this, it shouldn't take too long. And as it's going, you can see all the different data that will be in your spreadsheet. And just clicking on these will take you back to the WooCommerce admin so you can see exactly which data it is. This should just take one more second if we wait here for the reviews, and now everything's ready. Just a few things to point out here. Normally an export will just have a single output file. In this case, since we have additional data from WooCommerce that we need to bring over, you'll see extra files here. There's an images file, and this is a zip file of all the images that are in the HTML descriptions of your products, so you can bring those over safely. And then we also have the reviews that we configured earlier. At this point, we'll download the Excel output and we can see exactly what data we have. Now that we have the export file from WooCommerce, it's important to review it quickly before re-importing it back into Shopify. If you need to make any changes to the data before the re-import, you can do it here in the spreadsheet. Just going through the different tabs that we have custom collections, which are the WooCommerce categories. Then we have the product data here, which is in the Altera Matrixify format and has all the fields that you need. If we go all the way over to the right, we will see additional meta fields, and these are other WooCommerce attributes that are brought over that do not map directly to a Shopify field, but they're still stored attached to the products as meta fields. Then we have customers here, and the same thing for orders. We have all the different columns that we need here for the orders. Discounts or coupon codes are brought in with different requirements and all that set. And then if we go over to redirects, we see that we have redirects to help us preserve the SEO as we come over from WooCommerce. And it also supports things like nested categories here, where this nested category will redirect to the correct category. Once everything in this file looks good, or you've made any updates, you can save it and then re-import it with Altera to bring the data into Shopify. Now that we have the reviewed file with all our data, we can bring that back into Shopify. We'll go back to Chrome and go to the home page of Altera. From here, we'll click on Upload File and choose the file that we have generated in the previous step. The app will go through and it might show you a few warnings. Take a look at these, but they should be fine. There's a few columns that are not recognized because they're not official Shopify fields, but that's all right. One thing to call out here is for orders, we want to make sure that we don't have staff notifications sent. This will not send an email to the customer, but you as the store or the store owner will receive a lot of emails, one for every order that we input. So we can just disable that here and close it. We're also on a development store that has a limit of 5 orders per minute on the API side, so that will be a little bit slower. Once everything here looks good, we can just click on Start Import, acknowledge that we've seen the warnings, and the app will begin importing this data for us. The first thing it will do is products, and then it will do the collections, redirects, and others, and it automatically picks the best order to make sure that all dependencies are met. Once we see some of the data here, we can click on it and get a preview of what it looks like. So in this case, we have the 3 images pulled over along with a description. While this is working, we can also go through and bring over the other data. So the 2 other points from our migration are that we had the images and the reviews. For the images, we'll download that zip file here and open it up. And we see we have, in our case, just 2 files. To upload those, we'll go over to Content, Files, and we'll upload the files, and we can just do Control A or select all the files here, open them, and now they'll be uploaded into Shopify. If we go back to our job here, we also have the reviews CSV, but we'll wait for all the products to be imported and everything else before we do that. Let's go back and check on the status of our job. It says still processing at this point. We're getting close to being done though. We're at the orders. Because we had that warning before, the orders will take a little bit longer, but we can just wait for that to complete. Okay, now the import has completed and we have all the data in our Shopify store. As the import was running, we could always preview the results here, but now we can see everything. If we go to products, we see that we have our customers here and our orders as well. And clicking on one of those will show the different line items, how they're linked directly to the products in the Shopify admin. We've also imported one product that had an image in the description. Let's check on that one. So I believe that was beanie with logo. So if we download that, we see that the image is still here, and we can verify that this file is now hosted on Shopify. So if we open the image in a new tab, we see it's on our Shopify CDN. So when we move over from WooCommerce, that file will still exist. At this point, we can bring in the reviews and we should be all done. Once we have our product and other data imported into Shopify, the last step is to import our reviews. Since there's no standard way to do this, it has to be a separate step, and we'll use Judge Me for our example. To do this, we'll go over to Altera again, and we'll find our migration job here, and we can download the Judge Me Reviews file. So if we open that up here, we see that we just have the reviews formatted in Judge Me's format along with the correct product handles. So we can close that and import the reviews. We'll open up the Judge Me app. On the left-hand side, we'll go to Settings, and then we want to import the reviews from a spreadsheet. So we'll click on Import from a spreadsheet, add the files, and we'll choose our Judge Me review file. Everything else can be left as a default, and we'll click on Next. The one issue you might encounter is it might give you an error for the picture URLs, and this will just be if there's no picture URLs for your reviews. In that case, you can just do skipped, and then we'll click on Next. And we want to use the product handle for matching, which maps there. Click Next. This all looks good, so we can import, and it should just take a little bit, and we'll receive an email once it's finished. If we look here at the bottom, we can see that the import is completed. And if we go over to reviews on the left, we see that we have the different reviews correctly linked to the users, the product, and their ratings. And that's the whole process. Today we covered how to take our WooCommerce products, orders, and all, and migrate them into Shopify using Altera. First, we created an export Excel file and supporting files that contain all our store data, and then we re-imported those into Shopify using Altera. This allowed us to see all our different orders, products, and everything linked together. You can find Altera on the Shopify App Store, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.